See, Oga, press me.
You guys just your mouth now. How you for you guys just you can't you not listen to yourself.
Mute your mic.
This guy they operate your phone, no. Come. Okay, yeah.
Please mute your mic.
Yes.
Yes,
Like it. It's my money.
Maybe I'm done,
It's my money. Yeah, visiting. Mommy. Mommy.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can somebody hear me?
Yes, you can hear me.
Can somebody hear me? Good afternoon, everybody.
afternoon.
Somebody else
Good
on this
afternoon,
one
ma'am.
and you can hear me.
Good
Please, can you
afternoon.
answer?
Who am I by you?
I can't hear your voice, so what are you saying? Hello.
Papa, I'm sorry.
Isn't there any class governor here? No
Please,
class
you guys
governor.
should mute your
Mike,
mic.
can you mute your mic?
Mama, please, we can mute everybody. Maybe we should go ahead and do
If
that.
there's any class governor, can I see your hands up?
But yeah, please.
This is serious. Okay. Rejoice. Okay, can
Yes,
you hear
ma'am.
me, Rejoice?
Yes, ma'am. I can hear you, ma'am. I'll give you blow. I'll go on, sir.
Who be like to that group?
You guys should mute your mic now. What is all this? What is all this?
If you can hear me, can somebody type on the chat box? Yes. I want to see a yes before I continue. Nobody is saying anything. Oh, yes. Okay. Thank you. Thanks very much. All right. I welcome you to this class. What we're looking at today is the factors affecting public and private organizations. You can lower your hand, Rejoice. You can lower your hand now. Thank you. And so you should also help in organizing the class. I don't want noise, okay? So today we're going to look at factors affecting public and private organizations in Nigeria. I want to welcome all of you once more to this class, and I apologize if my team and I have not done very well. You can understand I've been on leave and I've just resumed. So from now henceforth, we'll take it up from where we stopped, okay? So like I said, we are looking at factors affecting public and private organizations in Nigeria. We will try and define what organizations are. We'll try and look at the different types of organization. We'll look at the differences, between the public and private organizations. We'll look at some of the issues or challenges that they have. We'll also look at some of the success nuggets, okay, that can help each of these organizations do well in their organizations. Now we'll start by looking at the definition of organizations. It's unfortunate I can't hear you people. Very unfortunate. I would have loved to ask questions, but maybe my gen, I think, is making so much noise because as I said, I don't have light. And the gen is just, sounding and making that noise on my head, but I'll just have to manage. Okay, so we would like to define organization. And from what we have here, we have organization as a body of people with shared goals. Organizations can be made up of 2, 3, 4 people who come together because they have a given objectives. Organization can also be systems, that are created to achieve common goals through the people and then, people to work relationship and all of that. Of course, when you're getting into an organization, An organization cannot be named an organization if there are no purposes or there are no goals, towards that organization. And in any case, you can also have what you call illegal organizations. Of course, we have secret organizations that people do not know what they do and don't even understand their modus operandi or the reason for their existence. But for them, on their own, they know the reason they are existing. They have their leadership, they have their hierarchy, they have everything that they want to put in place. They know a way or have a way of communicating to themselves and stuff like that. So such organizations may be criminal organizations because what they are doing is not legal and they will not want anybody to know about it. And sometimes to some resistance movements, are also organizations like they will classify Boko Haram, they will classify IPOB and all of that, or even the Niger Delta, some of those, they are groups that they have. They can classify them too as illegal because they are not registered and nobody seems to know about them and their operation, or their operation is seen as something not benefiting mankind, okay, or that is detrimental to the society. And so organizations may include unions, associations, companies, corporations, cooperatives, anywhere that you have group of people or group of persons coming together that have an aim, that can talk to themselves, that are legally recognized, those are organizations. Even trade unions, like we have in the organizations, are organizations within the organization where they work. And so for any organization to be termed organization, they must have their goals. They will have leadership. They will have their means of communication. And there must be action. They should be seen, to be active and be doing something which everybody may see. In the case of legal organizations, are what they themselves as a group of people and those who are with them, may see as their own action. And so for an organization to be genuine, it means it must have legal backing or legal recognition through registration and of course societal influence. Sometimes when it is societal influence, means they are a group. Like if you take the, the obedient movement, for instance now, they are a group of people. They are not registered as obedient movement, but they are groups and they are doing things that group members can do. They have their leadership. They have everything. Just like when the youth, organized that NSAS and co. They had leadership, they're a group, but even though they are not registered, but there is societal influence in it. So that is the way an organization runs, and that's the definition of an organization. Oh, okay, these are the learning outcomes that I've just mentioned. I even forgot I have it. It should have come anyhow before the organization, but that's the learning outcomes. Now, what are the types of organizations we have? Organizations are classified broadly into two. You have the public organizations, and then you have the private organizations. So when we talk about public organizations, we are looking at organizations that are owned by government, organizations that are run by government for the welfare of the people. Maybe some, let's say, parastatals that government owns, or even some organizations, that are into commercial activities and all the rest. But everything that the government of a nation controls or that has as its own is regarded as a public organization. And so it will consist of corporations, maybe authorities, some boards, councils, and even some limited companies that government has full or majority share in. So you can also call them parastatals, just like I explained earlier. But there's something about them. They are owned and funded by government, be it the federal government, state government, local government, all those organizations or parastatals or authorities or boards or company, belongs to government. It could be any of the three arms or three tiers of government. So they will include ministries. In that case, you can have the federal ministry, you can also have the state ministries. You can have the public enterprises, you can have parastatals. And examples of these things, of course, the ministries, we all know the ministries that Nigeria as a government are the three tiers of government runs, except the local government. So let's say the 2 tiers at the federal and the state level. And so when you talk about examples of the organizations that should belong or that belongs to the government, you'll be looking at organizations like the Central Bank of Nigeria, the Asset Management Company of Nigeria, Bureau of Public Enterprises, Corporate Affairs Commission, and so many of them that we know about. What is their goal? What do they aim at achieving? They aim at achieving, serving the public interest. And they are usually not for profit oriented, except when the organizations are going down and government is thinking of a way, to bring those organizations up, then it can think of making it profit oriented. So that if nothing, it can at least, pay the salaries of those working in there, even if it is not raking in so much profit for the organization or raking so much profit for the government. Okay. Now, when you talk about private organizations, we're looking at all other institutions, all other organizations, all other company that does not, that does not belong to the government, that are owned by individuals and not necessarily government. Okay. So you'll be looking at any organization that, whether it's into production or services or what have you, but does not belong to government. So, wow, that does not belong to government. So in essence, they are organizations that are owned and operated by individuals or groups. They are profit-driven in nature, and they will include organizations like the small and medium-scale enterprises, multinationals, and stuff like that. If we have to give examples of those, we'll be looking at Cadbury, Nestle, maybe Procter & Gamble, NGOs, cooperatives. These are organizations that are formed by individuals other than government. They came together to say, okay, we're going to be running on some of these economic, economic services or products to serve the people, but at a profit. Okay, they are not just doing it. And then you also have some NGOs, non-governmental organizations, that are serving it just to salvage or to help humankind or just to help the society in their own activities. So they are run independently of the government. But what happens is that they depend on government policies. So government policies will definitely affect their operations and everything that they do. Now, what are the seeming differences between public organizations and private organizations? If you're looking at the differences, say in terms of ownership, it's already appeared in the definition that we gave. Ownership, that of public is owned by government, whereas that of private is owned by individuals. When you talk about the objectives for which they set up the organizations or the companies or the parastatals, whatever, it is purely, for public organizations, it is purely welfarist in nature. If you take, for instance, provision of light in the past, when it used to be NEPA and co, it is for the welfare of the people, and people were paying more like peanuts, to receive those services. You talk about maybe water corporation and stuff like that. It is purely for welfare of the people. You talk about construction of roads, okay, which belongs to the Ministry of Works, and all of that is welfare in nature. But for businesses that are classified under private, that is simply for profit. Theirs is to create wealth, okay? Create products and services that will serve the society as well as earn profit for them in return. And then when you look at efficiency of these organizations, in the public service, it is assumed that efficiency is generally low. In fact, in some instances, one will assume they don't even exist. Okay, whereas in the private sector, it is very high, because private sector is if you don't perform, of course, you will be kicked out of the organization. If you don't perform, you are kicked out of the organization. You don't need anybody to tell you that. But if you even take some of these public organizations that we know about, okay, you see people behaving anyhow. Some will come to work 10 o'clock when you're supposed to resume on your desk 8 o'clock. Some will come, they will move about gisting and talking when you're supposed to be attending to issues of the organization and stuff like that. So all of those things make efficiency generally low. Whereas in the private institution, that is not tolerated. If you check some of the bank cashiers, you can't answer calls until it is time for your break. You know, when you go for lunch, then you can make all the calls there is. When you come back, you're coming to face your work, and that is it. Then in terms of financing, the public organization is financed through public revenue, the taxes that people pay, and then government try to subsidize, you know, some of those things. Whereas in terms of financing for the private organization is entirely their private capital, which could come either as a result of the money they have saved or maybe the loan they have taken from organizations and all of that. So that's a difference. Then you talk about employment. Most people believe that when people, you know, are employed in public organizations or in the public service, that job is secured because, you know, it is government. Except there is no government again, then that means, you know, there won't be job anymore. Whereas if you are in the private institution, like we said, any small or any minute error can even cost you your job. So one would be forced to say maybe it is less secured, but in the public sector, it is secured. Then you talk about promotion in the public service. Promotion in the public service is by seniority. Sometimes it doesn't even matter what the person is doing or what is going on, whether the person works or not, provided you are a senior and you have maybe acquired that 3 years that you need to, you know, acquire before you can be moved. So once they acquire it like that, whether they are performing or not performing, they are promoted because they are senior and should be promoted. Whereas in the private sector, it must be performance based. You are performing, and that's the reason you'll be promoted. Somebody can be your senior. If the person isn't performing, there is nothing anybody can do about it. You will remain at that same spot. If care is not taking, somebody who came in even before, even after you, you know, becomes your senior because the person is promoted based on performance. And then we have now, if we look at the job examples of this public and private, like we mentioned before, CBN, AMCON, NMPC, NRSC, even in education, like all the federal universities are public entities. They are public enterprises because they are run and, you know, they are run and headed by government. So it's whatever the government says that happens, except for private universities that are privately owned and will run strictly with everything that, you know, pertains to private organizations. And you now talk about private organizations, you have Nestle, all of that. I shouldn't even, you know, disturb us about those examples. Excuse me. Now, what are the forms of private organizations that we have? Forms of private organizations that we have. Now, we have the sole proprietorship, we have partnerships. No, first, okay, let's classify them according to their according to their corporation. The first two, sole proprietorship and partnerships, are unincorporated. Unincorporated means they are not registered with CAC, that is Corporate Affairs Commission. They are not guided by CAMA 1990 or CAMA even 2020. You know, that's the Companies and Allied Matter Act of 1990. That is now CAMA 2020. Okay, they are not regularized or regulated by that. They are not regularized without registration. So that is the truth there. Whereas the incorporated are those who have gone through CAMA to register their organizations and everything is set and they are given their registration number. So when we talk about sole proprietorship, I don't think I need to bore us with that. I'm sure you have done part of that in your year one. That means one person, you know, who owns an organization, who takes all the risk, who takes all the profit, who every blame, everything, whether good or bad, falls on him. It may not just be him alone, but he is the owner of the organization, but can get people too who can assist him in his work. Okay, take for instance a carpenter now who owns a carpentry shop. He can have people who are working with him who are helping, but he is the alpha and omega in that organization. What he says happens. Whatever profit he makes, if he decides to give a little to those who are assisting him, well and good. If he decides to take it, well and good. And when the other or the otherwise happens, let's say there's a failure or maybe a risk that he has to carry, or the organization is going down, he also takes that alone. Then we talk about partnerships. Partnerships are people, maybe two or three, coming together to say we want to be partners. You have general partners, you have active partners, dormant, quasi-normal. When you talk about general, these general partners do everything in the organization. And if there is any risk, any risk that will come to the business, they will take it even beyond what their investment is in that organization. Then the active partners are the ones who run the organization on a day-to-day basis. Dormant partners are just there, they have contributed their money and they are not doing anything. Whereas quasi-nominal are maybe those people, that are opinion molders, or that the society will hear their name, that they belong to an organization and they will want to, have dealings with that organization for the sake of those people. Those are the nominal partners. And then we have limited partners. When you talk about limited partners, these two people or three people, will go into a business together and arrange that they will only be liable in terms of maybe liabilities to the amount they have contributed. So if, for instance, we enter, let's say two of us enter into a partnership and I'm contributing 10 million. If anything happens, that 10 million is what I am losing. It will not go beyond that. Then when you have limited liability partners, these partners now, quite all right, have defined, it is even more close to something like corporation or incorporated organization, even though it is not, they have agreed that our liability remains our liability. Like I said in the limited partnership earlier, what they have contributed is what they are losing if anything goes wrong. But even aside from that, in a partnership, when an organization is going down, whether it be caused by one person, or maybe out of the mistake of one person or error or something, everybody will bear it. But in this limited liability, whoever caused it will carry his cross. You as a partner will only lose that which you have contributed. That is for limited liability companies in partnership. Now, when we talk about incorporations, that is the ones that are incorporated, you also have limited companies, those that are classified under LTD, limited, that is private limited, and those that are PLC, okay? Now, for those that are private limited, their shares cannot be traded publicly, okay? It cannot be traded publicly. If you have to buy their shares, you must get in touch with somebody who owns a share in that company. And by the way, those who are in that private limited company are owners of the business. It could be the MDs and even members of that organization that have shares in the organization. So outsiders will not have anything to partake of their shares in that organization. And if they must do that, it means they have to get maybe one of the shareholder either relinquishing his shares. But that shareholder cannot even do that alone. He needs to get other board members, other shareholders to say, I want to sell my share and I am selling it to Mr. A or Mr. Z or whoever. And they all agree that, okay, you can sell. Because it could be that even those who are there may want to even buy more of that shares. They wouldn't want an external person or another person again to come in. But when you talk about private public limited, their shares can be sold via stock exchange. I'm sure so many of you, excuse me, I'm sure so many of you have maybe shares of organizations that you have bought. You didn't need to go to anybody who owned a share in that organization. You simply go to the stock exchange and buy, provided the organization is selling and it becomes your own and you become a shareholder there and to the level, to which you purchased their shares. So that is the incorporated companies or incorporated organizations. Then we have others. You have the NGOs, like we mentioned, you have the trade unions, you have the cooperatives, all of them are private organizations. Don't forget, we're looking at private organizations, even though we're now separated unincorporated and incorporated. But the others too, who are also private organizations, like I did say earlier, are NGOs. They are part of it, trade unions, cooperatives, and associations. All of them are part of it. Then let's look at the forms of public organizations. Now, like we said, public organizations are mostly called corporations or parastatals or authorities, depending on the name they are given. They also are incorporated, even though their name is corporation. Corporation there is the noun, incorporated is the verb. I don't know if people understand what I am saying. Incorporation is the act of making it legal, but the name they are called, they are corporations, but they have to make it legal too, because it has to be registered, and their entity, and they should be an entities on their own, so that if anything happens, they can be sued and they can also sue. So they are different from their owners, who is the government at any level, whether federal or state, even though it is government who owns them. In the case of private organizations, you know, they go through the KAMA Act, they go through CAC and all of that. But in the case of public organizations, they are always created by the Acts of Parliament. And you can now divide them into public utilities, financial institutions, commercial and industrial companies. Now, when you talk about public utilities, that is the organizations, you know, that supply the society with some of those welfareist, you know, what do you call them? Welfareist actions or welfareist things. Look at Nigerian Railway Corporation. It is meant for everybody. Provided it is working, you can hop in on any train and get to where you're going. Although you have to pay a little just for the sustenance of that. Okay. Then you have the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation. Well, that one, we know the activities for now. You have Nigerian Ports Authority. You have PHCN, which before now was NEPA, and from PHCN now, they have distributed them into DISCOs and GENCOs and what have you. We will get to that. So it is, how do I put it, privatized partially, but government still has a say in all of them. But those are public utilities, because in the past it was assumed that no individual, you know, can generate light. I mean, in the terms of NEPA and co. But we have seen that all of that, I mean, is false now. People can generate light with virtually anything. You can generate light. So that's the reason. I'm sure also they were trying to privatize so that so many people can go into electricity provision. Now you have the financial institutions. Those may include CBN, you know, NEXIM, Nigerian Export Import Bank. You have the Bank of Industry. Those are financial institutions that government own, that are under this corporation, and you know, that are registered by acts too, and stuff like that. Then when you talk about commercial entities, you're probably looking at maybe state hotels. State hotels, I don't know how many of them are still existing. In the past, we used to have Nikon, Nuga, we have, okay, which I think it was later on migrated as Transcorp, okay? Then you may have state hotels that the government owns and they are running. Newspaper houses, I remember in those days when you had Daily Times. I'm not sure we still have Daily Times now. Textile mills, Nigerian Textile, you know, company, all of those are government organizations. You have insurance companies, you have Nikon, you have, is it Nikon, you have Nigerian Re, you know, all of those are government properties or government organizations. Now, all of these organizations, be they, whether they are private or public, usually will have challenges. And sometimes we relate some of these challenges as, you know, environmental challenges, which may come under first, you know, political, economic, social, and technological. Even though the way they are listed here, it did not come under that. But when you check each and every one of them, you will know that they fall under one of these things we're talking about. Now, some of the challenges that they have is political instability, whether they are private or public. The moment we keep changing our government and keep changing authorities and keep changing leadership, there will always be a problem, because at that time, not just are we going to have political instability, we are likely to also have, you know, We also, not only are we going to have just political instability, you can also have policy instability, because anybody who comes in new will want to come up with his own policies, the way it suits them. And that is not good for any organization, because you now need to redirect, to re-engineer the organization to fit into the new government in power. And then another problem that, bisects all of them is infrastructure, inadequate or poor infrastructure. When you don't have adequate infrastructure or you have poor infrastructure, it is a big problem. Now that, for instance, PHCN, has been privatized to an extent, it still does not solve our power problem. There are some people, the way they have classified it now, who are on band A, and by the way, I'm on band A, even though I don't have light in my house now because of the metering. I don't know what they did to my meter, a 3-phase, and before you know it, it trips off. So other people around you will have light, but you have a remote issue. Mine is remote, just within me and my meter, okay? So, and some organizations may be going through that, because if they are using heavy equipment and they are going for such meters, you could just be having that tripping, but that will not stop production. What would they do? They will have to fall back on generator, just like I fell back to generator this afternoon to ensure that this class holds. So I thought, touch over it. How do I tell these students again that I don't have light on this? That will mean, and I said, no, I have to use my generator to do this. So poor infrastructure is a challenge to both public and private sector. And then you talk about corruption. Corruption, whether at the public or private, is a problem. We're talking about corruption, soaring high in public organizations. It is same in private, only that some of those people, may not be caught. And the moment they are caught, they are fired. But in the public sector, corruption, has, how do you put it? Onlonyo, opomo, ofabag, it is so hydra-headed that everybody is in it. Let me just use that one. Let me make a generic statement. Everybody is in it. And the very few who may not want to be in it are always seen as outcasts. They will ask you, is it your papa's business? Is it your mother's business? That kind of a thing. So that's the way it is. So corruption and policy inconsistency, or policy somersault are a challenge or a problem to both public and private. If you have an organization, a private organization, that cannot be consistent with its policy, that cannot visualize the future based on what the environment is giving it, and will have to be changing policies anytime, it's a challenge. And then limited access to technology and funding. Funding, whether at the private or public sector, is always a problem. Some of the public sector organizations, the way government register them with lower capital investment. And so that makes it difficult for them to ask for loan from maybe banks. Banks don't trust government institutions to pay back, because they know that anything can happen and they will lose their money. And then access to technology. Not everybody is tech savvy. Even those who are tech savvy that are trying to teach some of the old hands, they are not even, some are not willing, and some may not even grab it. You will discover that what you have said today, you will say over and over and over and over again, okay? So access to technology is also a challenge, whether to private or public. Imagine a bank now that does not have ATM, or a bank now that cannot do electronic banking. What happens? So the educational system too is also a problem. If the future leaders cannot be trained because of the system we are running, because there is no money, that's a challenge. And then labor management face-off, whether at the private organization or public organization, they're always having that face-off. What labor wants is not what the owners of the organizations want. And what the owners want is not what labor wants. So there's always that face-off. There's always that conflict. But better managed with the private sector, sometimes public sector, it is a problem. And that's the reason organizations like the educational sector will sometimes want to go on strike, because they think government isn't giving them enough attention or giving or yielding to their request. Then we have the private sector specific challenges. What we just looked at before was that of public-private. Whichever one, wherever you belong, you will face those problems, okay? You will face them. But now we're looking at specific challenges that affect private sector. And again, limited funding access is coming up. If some of you are entrepreneurs, you can attest to the fact that it is not easy to get funding from the banks. Even with the establishment of microfinance banks and all of that, who are supposed to take care of all these small businesses, I'm not sure they are doing enough to help the people. And then we have unstable policies, just like we said, one government comes in and you want to turn around, what the other person has done. So it should not happen. How can they have it like this? We need to do it this way and none of that. Of course, the private organizations cannot function except they follow the policies of the government of the day. So it is a challenge to them specifically too. And then deteriorating or poor infrastructural support, like I said, that of electricity, everybody is digging their own borehole now. People are digging their own borehole. In the past, the water corporation will supply water to everywhere. And so you don't need to worry about water where you work, whether you need water or not. We all need water to exist. If you don't need water, you need to flush your toilet, you need to drink, you need to do so many things, even within the organization. Then the roads, we can see, even the situation we're going through now. If anybody passes this Oworo, this Ibadan Expressway, Oworo, what have you, road to Ikeja and Co., you will see the level of, construction that is going there. In the past, that place will always cause hold up, even though it is costing more now. But we do know that when they are done with it, it will make for free movement, okay? But now people are suffering. So when roads are bad, when roads are not put in their proper shape, it affects businesses. It is possible goods can't get across to the people that it needs to get across to. It is possible they can't get their raw materials from where they need to get it from. So all of those affect business. Now, consumer purchasing power has reduced drastically with the economic hardship that people are going through. Right now, before you spend your one kobo on anything, you would think very well. What is the importance of this to me? Is this something I can do away with? Is this something that really does not matter? So that you channel that money into something else, okay? And the Naira, it's not the value. The Naira that is floated does not have so much value now that you have your $1. $1 is 1,500. And so if any business person, let's say, is in the business of importing, that $1 cannot get you so much anymore. So the purchasing power of people has reduced drastically. It is also affecting private organizations who are in the business of profit making. And we used to say before that, they dump products on the Nigerian market. But I tell you now, it is even very difficult to dump products on Nigerian market because those who are going to bring in that product to dump will have to deal with a dollar, with a Naira value against other currencies of the world. So it is no longer dumping. But then in the past, it used to be, a challenge to the private sector. And tax burdens, you have, especially for small businesses, multiple levies and taxes. You will stay in your shop, these ones will come. We are from the local government, these ones will come. We are from the state government. These ones, tax here and there. So that also affects businesses, okay? And then this irregular pattern of exemptions to consumption taxes. There are people who are benefiting more and there are people who are benefiting less. Even in importation, there are some, products that you pay less tariff, some you pay more tariffs and all of that. So all that can be a challenge to the private sector, depending on the business that one is doing. Then we also have legal complexities. In fact, it is even worse now. There is no adequate legal procedure, that enforces contracts. If you as a customer now, a product has said, this product is going to make your hair, to enrich your hair, you will not go bad, you will not do, and then suddenly you start using it and you discover that, instead of enriching your hair, making your hair grow, instead you're losing your hair, and you say you want to go and file anything, you will not get nothing, you're not getting anything at the end of the day. You will go, especially if your legs are not strong and you don't know who knows who and who knows who. You may not get anywhere. It ends like that. I just use that as an example. And then you have poor management practices and low entrepreneurial skills. My dear, poor management practices. Even as we're talking about public organizations and corruption, like I said, it also dwells even the private organizations. Sometimes people, even in their businesses, bring in people who are not actually qualified or who may not have that skill to be able to take the organization to where it needs to be. Okay. And then they start with their management practices that may be very poor or low, that will be beneath standard. That can also affect the private sector, or sometimes to even the owners of the organization, these private organizations who want to lord themselves over others, who do not even understand their business very well, can also be a problem. Then for public sector, their own is very clear. Political interference, okay? Organizations under government can be made to do things that are unethical. They can ask them to employ, unqualified persons. Like now that the universities are about throwing out their request for employment, you will see lists from government, all government quarters, parastatals, everywhere, everybody bringing their list of persons. It doesn't matter whether those people are qualified or not. All they know is take this person in, take this person in. And you, as a management staff or as a leader of that organization, your hands may be tied. You cannot say no. And then you bring in people who cannot even deliver, And when such things happen, when, political interference and all those operational inefficiencies happen, you can say that even these government organizations can be made to embark on projects that will not add any real value. I don't want to give an example of what happened recently, and yet that project is abandoned simply because they wanted to get at somebody. They had to do certain things. Let that be. Okay? Or they were like, we are planning, or today now is the local government elections. They may ask maybe an organization to donate money, whether you like it or not. Even if that is the last money, they will say give it to the political party, or to the ruling party so that they will have money to use for their elections. So, and stuff like that. Political instability, we cannot overemphasize because, like I said, when you have new leadership, you have new boards for those corporations or
is actually not responsible. Okay, so there's somebody in mind, or of course, obviously there are people not even one person, people in mind. Yep.
Sorry, good afternoon, all. I think her network is disturbing, so probably we'll give her time, whether she will come back or not. Just give her a little time, please. Thank you.
Hello, Rejoice. Good afternoon. Please, I sent
Rejoice, my love.
I sent you a personal message, please. Hello, Rejoice.
Yeah, hello, ma'am.
Please, I sent you a personal message. I sent my number to you. Please call me after the class, please. Thank you.
Can anybody hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you now.
Can somebody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, ma, we can hear you.
Okay, you can hear me.
Yes, ma. Yes.
I'm sorry that the network
Yes,
threw me
ma'am.
out.
Sorry, the network
network
threw
threw
me
me
out. I
out.
didn't know.
I was even out and I was talking.
All right.
All right.
So
So we're almost
rounding
rounding up on the public sector specific challenges.
We have
We have just few slides to go. Okay. Let me just quickly run through them. I hope it's still recording. Yeah, good. So we talked about poor funding. Like I said, low equity capital base as set up, and maybe their inability to get loans from the banks. Then we talk about corruption and mismanagement. You know, people will take bribe at the detriment of the organization, or take bribe, you know, while the organization is bleeding, and they'll cover up. If we take, for instance, when NEPA used to be in operation, you know, they are coming to cut light because people have not been paying for electricity. And then they get to the company, somebody gives them money, you know, and they go without cutting the light. Meanwhile, people are still consuming the light. Or sometimes they can embezzle. And when they embezzle, they can set the place on fire or do something, or maybe organize a robbery, you know, or something that will make them take away whatever evidence there will be in case anybody would want to prove. And then you have lack of accountability and low productivity. Of course, people are not ready to give accounts of what they did in the public organization. Like we said, people don't take serious their work, they do whatever they like. So there's this poor attitude to work when it concerns the public organization or public sector, or like when it is a private organization that you have to be accountable for every of your actions and inactions. So what are the reform strategies, or what you call the success nudges for public sector? The success nugget for public sector, of course, came from the idea that the only way to make a government organization, all right, be accountable and be able to provide and be able to yield its increase from what they are doing is through privatization and commercialization. It is agreed, really, that that is the only way and the better way to go for organizations. And so you see government dealing with either privatization or commercialization, and each of them can be full or partial. When you say they are full, that means government, if it's full privatization, that means government has totally handed over everything to that private investor. It becomes the private investor's own. And when you say it is partial, means the transfer or that sale was done of certain maybe segments, not everything in all. Why government, will still retain some level of control in those organizations, even though they have sold out part of it to private people. An example that I will give you of that will be maybe something like this PHCN now, that you have DISCOs, GENCOs, and then you have government, still controlling, and they are the ones who are they the ones generating? Okay, that will be an assignment for you people. Now, full commercialization is a way of trying to restructure, a government enterprise so that it will begin to operate like a private business firm and earn profit, okay, without government putting a hand in it or subsidizing for them, through money or through labor or through anything. They'll just be operating as though they are a private organization because they will be making profit. And when it is partial, means that restructuring is just for them to reduce reliance, on government. We don't want this organization to rely so much on us again as a government. They should be operating with their own, become financially independent. You don't need to rely on government for money. But even aside from that, they can still get some support from government. And all of this is, aimed at, getting efficiency in public organizations, making them accountable, and making that organization grow. That is the essence of the reform and strategies or the success nuggets. Whereas for the private sector, their own is to ensure that at all times they have adequate capital to meet up with their daily operations. They should have these entrepreneurial skills. That every skill required for your business to thrive, you have, and you don't bring in people who are mediocres, who may not be able to take the organization to where they want it. And then they must be innovative. If the big companies are going for mass production, any private organization that is coming up can look for custom-made goods so that when somebody, this is mass-produced, this one is custom-made, that can cap the niche for them and they'll take advantage of that market. And then they should look for a cost and efficient operation, way of, cost-efficient way of operating, like, having a lower capital investment. Don't go and put everything when you're not even sure what the outcome will be. And your operating cost, you do it such a way that it is reduced. Of course, you need to do your cost-benefit analysis to be able to know how to operate, given the cost in that and whether production or services. And then you can also source for raw materials locally instead of looking to maybe import, which will now make you spend more money because our currency is very low or is devalued. Now, one should also look for strategic exemptions and maybe market responsiveness. What do we mean? You can push for exemption from corporation tax. Organizations do it. You can, see a way you can strike a chord with the government or maybe use, groups to ensure that the how do I put it, the segment or the industry where you operate, you can push so that you can get an exemption, from some of those corporation tax. The accountants know better in this wise. And then you don't just operate, you need to be responsive to the market. What do the people want? Your consumers, what do they want? And then those you're competing in the same market with, what are they doing? If you don't know what your competitors are doing and you're just operating blindly, then you are on your own. And then effective marketing and sales force, you need to have them. If you have your product, you need people who will need to let the people know that this product is here. But even before you go into selling your product, you would have, of course, done your marketing. And marketing does not mean selling. Marketing means right from when you are thinking of when that idea is being conceived to the point where you have either the product or services out. So you must have an effective marketing and sales force to identify what the people really want. And so in summary, we've been able to define public and private organizations. We've stated their differences. We've outlined the forms of organization, looked at their challenges, and then we have also identified, some ways that they can use to improve on what they do. So I think we're going to leave it at that. Like I said, you have an assignment, and the next time we come to class, I'm not saying you're going to write it and submit. When we come, we'll start from these examples. You will give me 3 examples each of the Nigerian enterprises or corporations that have been fully and partially privatized, as well as those that are fully and partially commercialized. So I thank you for listening. I'm going to stop sharing now, and then we can ask our questions. So if you want to ask, okay, Hayford Osagi. Hayford.
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon,
yes, please, you need to speak up loud a little. I don't know what's wrong with my...
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Can you hear me, ma'am? Good afternoon, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. My question is... I
can barely hear you, but go ahead.
Okay, straightforward, ma'am. This is my question. You made emphasis on the diligence in terms of a worker who is being diligent, then receive promotion.
You said emphasis on what?
I said you make emphasis on diligence. A situation whereby a worker is due for promotion and the worker is being promoted, and among others. But ma'am, my question is this: is there dignity in labor these days? Because there used to be dignity in labor whereby fair treatment is being given, what a worker is due to is being given. But nowadays, is there still dignity in labor? Because you hear people will say someone who is not qualified to head a particular position or department, you hear, it's my brother. That is why he's there. Even when the person is not qualified, those who are qualified are under him. So my question is this: is there dignity in labor these days?
My dear, my dear, there is dignity in labor for those who feel such way, okay? Now, if you're good at what you are doing, you are happy doing it, you don't feel embarrassed because this is what you are doing. You are proud to say, I am a carpenter, I am a bricklayer, I work with this organization, I am in the factory, I do packaging and all of that. That is dignity in labor, okay? And then the people concerned who are supposed to maybe give you maybe a pay or identify you or recognize you for what you do are not doing it. That is, I mean, essentially a different thing, okay? But as for dignity in labor, there is dignity in labor. But like I said, corruption, especially in the public sector, has so eaten deep. Like as I told you, somebody who is qualified to be promoted is not promoted. Somebody who isn't, for the fact that you have come into the organization before that other person, they are seeing you as senior, and so you must be promoted. Even when you're not productive, everybody can see it clearly that you more or less elate about in the organization, and there's hardly anything you can do well, and there are people who are doing the work, and yet because you're their senior, you're taking the glory, and then public sector will promote you. Whereas in the private sector, it is not like that. Your work speaks for you, okay? Your work will speak for you. Whatever you do is what the private sector, first, private sector is simply there to make profit. And if you're not adding to their profit, you're your own. Like the banks, for instance, they will give you, a target. If you're unable to do this, then that. You will just say maybe a younger or a lower officer goes out and, makes whatever it is they want. And the person goes aboard over you. And there's nothing anybody can do, okay? But it is common with the public sector where we do eye service. There are some people, like in the dialect or in my local descent, they will not be there when you are doing everything about the breadfruit, but the moment it is done, you will see them take over and they want to take glory. It is like that. But as for dignity in labor, there is dignity in labor. I don't know if that has answered your question. It's unfortunate that's the situation.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. I just want to be sure, ma'am, because things has changed. It's no longer the way it used to be.
Drastically, it's no longer the way it is, yes. And everybody is seeing it. And even where you have to bring in somebody who knows what it takes. Because of corruption, I know this person is my brother, is my sister. You want to bring in a mediocre, and that is killing organizations. Essentially, the public organizations. Make you pretty. Yes. All right.
Thank you, ma. Thank you, ma.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Any other question? Rejoice.
Yes, ma'am.
On this call. I hope you have ended the recording. Otherwise, it's going to be very bulky for you people. And the thing is broken into two now. I don't know how you're going to do it, but I'll give you the slides all the same. And I think the slides are detailed a little. Is it not?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So any other question? If there is none, I would like to take my leave because my laptop too is also going down again. They've turned 15%. Okay, well, ladies and gentlemen, I think we'll need to call it a day. Is somebody speaking? Hello. All right. Have a blessed evening. Thank you.
Thank you, ma.
Thank you. Enjoy your weekend, ma.
And you too.
Thank you, ma'am.
Did you get my?
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.